Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Barrier Islands Virtual Hurricane Summit. I am Patrick Serrano, Mayor of the town of Indian Shores, and currently President of the Barrier Islands Government Council, also known as the Big C. Comprised of Bel Air Beach, Bel Air Shore, Clearwater, Indian Rocks Beach, Indian Shores, Madeira Beach, North Reddington Beach, Reddington Shores, St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island. The Big C stimulates communication between the Barrier Island cities to unite and bring focus on common subjects such as tourism, public transportation, beach renourishment, marine environment, public safety, air and water quality in the county, and state and federal governments while respecting the individuality of each city. Today's summit will include valuable information on hurricane preparedness and COVID-19. Our speakers this evening include Joe Borys, Operations Manager of Pinellas County Emergency Management, Chief Mike Burton of the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District, Mecca Surfastini, Health and Human Services Program Lead with Pinellas County Emergency Management, Joe Primash, Commander, U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 11-3, and hopefully Bobby Deskins, Chief Meteorologist at 10 News WTSP Tampa St. Pete. There will be a question and answer session after the speakers. And now I would like to introduce this evening's meeting moderator, Mary Burrell, Whole Community Engagement Program Lead with Pinellas County Emergency Management. Mary, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. I am also a beach resident. I moved here 29 years ago, and I know how hard the Big C works. I know how hard our chamber members work, our elected officials, the staff, the volunteers. We can't begin to start saying names of people that we need to thank, but just know that you are appreciated by all of us. I also wanted to take the time to thank our firefighters, our law enforcement officers, our paramedics, our Department of Health personnel, and all of our emergency responders who work every day to keep us safe. And we've certainly been keeping you busy the last couple of months. And thank all of you for joining us tonight. This is our very first Barrier Islands Virtual Hurricane Summit, brought to you compliments of COVID-19. Now, this isn't the way we usually like to get together and learn about hurricanes on the beach, but we are still happy that we're able to have this opportunity to share some information with you. We do want to answer your questions. You can post your questions in the Q&A. You'll see a little Q&A in the middle of your screen on the bottom. Those are not anonymous for the questions that you do ask. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. Those that we do not have time to get to, we will answer and send a follow-up email to all of you. We will also include the contacts for our speakers and also any helpful links that we mentioned. And this is recorded, so we'll also have a link there to the video that once it is posted. So you can also tell your friends that they can get this information online and to find us on YouTube. During this program, all of you as our attendees will be muted and your video will remain off. Last but not least, we will be asking you a couple polling questions during the program. Make sure you're paying attention. And here's our first one. All right, so here it is. There's your polling tablet. Do you know your evacuation zone? We're kind of going up and down a little bit. Okay, let's show you the results. I see that 80% do know their evacuation zone. All right. For those 20%, I do hope that you don't live on the beaches or have a business on the beach, because if you do, all the beaches are in evacuation A. If you don't live in Evacuation A and you're one of those 20%, please do me a favor and look up your zone as soon as this is over. Okay, now on to our panelists. I'm very happy to introduce our Operations Manager of Emergency Management of Pinellas County, Joe Boris. He and the director, Kathy Perkins, they've been on the front lines of COVID-19 for the last couple of months, and now they're leading us into the 2020 hurricane season with a tropical system right outside our window. So, Joe, thank you so much and welcome. So obviously, we're all concerned about hurricane season in the COVID-19 environment. Can you tell us about generally what we need to know this year and what's different?
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, a little excitement out there in the Gulf as the tropical storm makes its way north, right? And let's hope it unfortunately continues that way for us, right? And then, yeah, what's different this year is the COVID environment. And I think Mecca will talk about some of that more specifically about when your sheltering operation, your sheltering considerations, and what you need to do to protect yourself. But as far as evacuations, especially for the barrier islands, as Mary mentioned, you know, all the barrier islands are at evacuation level A. So for those that didn't know, if you're living on one of the islands, you're at evacuation level A. I grew up on St. Pete Beach myself, and you know, and living in paradise has some risks besides sunburns, and that is, you know, the Gulf raise its ugly head every now and then and present us with some challenges. And one of those is storm surge. So I just want you to know that when we call an evacuation order, we're looking at storm surge that's enough to get inside your homes. And that's not safe to be there with storm surge in there. So we do the analysis with the slosh model, the sea, land, and overland surges from the National Hurricane Center. And I think you can see that up on the screen there. That's our evacuation zones. And all the barrier islands are an A, and the ones in St. Pete that are connected by a bridge, those islands are as well too. And one of the things that we got to remind folks is that this modeling doesn't take into account the wave action and the height of the water that gets above that. So if you have 4 foot of storm surge, you could have 4 foot of waves on top of that. So that's about 8 foot of water sloshing around in your homes and in your neighborhoods. So that's what we're asking you to evacuate for. You run from the water and hide from the wind. And so we have a little saying here at Emergency Management, and that's to know your risk, make a plan, and stay informed. So the part I'm talking about right now is to know your risk. And we have some ways for you to do that. And that's with our Know Your Zone application and our Storm Surge Protector application. But again, I can make it easy for you guys. If you're on the barrier islands, you're at evacuation level A. And that's because you're vulnerable to all surge heights. So if you look over to the right on the screen, you see all the different varying surge heights. And it's a little misleading in the sense that E, it says up to 35 feet. Well, what's that really saying is for that E evacuation zone, it takes up to 35 foot of storm surge to reach that zone. Well, all that water that gets up to the level E, and that's way inland, as you can see on the map, goes past your barrier island. So you're going to get some tall waters out there, deep water, and we just ask you to heed our evacuation warning. And I know that there's some considerations from folks about being in condos or going or evacuating up, they call it. And I can just tell you that that's not really a great idea because what happens is, you know, the electrical equipment and things like that for your elevators, for your systems in your building are down on the ground floor. And they're going to get saturated with that salt water, and they may work for a little bit or till the power cuts off. And I'll let you know now, Duke does not cut off the power to the barrier islands. It actually trips out, and they'll keep it running as long as they can, but it isn't turned off at any point in time until it actually just trips out and then it's cut off in a systematic way, but it's not turned off, okay? But once that happens, you know, your systems fail and then, you know, heat rises in a condo. So if you're up above, the heat's going to rise. If you can't get up and down, that's not safe. And I would ask, you know, the one thing to consider what is downstairs on the ground floor, and that's probably your vehicle. And now that's in there, and it's in a storm surge vulnerable area. And now you've kind of trapped yourself in a condo, got to go up and down the stairs, and then you may have lost your vehicle. So I just want you to consider that if you're in a condo and think that you're going to evacuate up. And actually the winds too are more pure and more stronger the higher up. There's no friction, there's no trees to block them. When you're up at that 6th, 7th, 8th floor, you're going to get those straight line winds that come out of there. And you may have shutters, but your neighbors might not. So I want you to consider that when you're thinking about staying behind. Because, the second part of our phrase is, make a plan. I'm not saying all this to scare you all or anything like that. It's just to remind you of why you need to make a plan. And that plan is just to evacuate to friends, the neighbors, somewhere inland, some of those areas that you see in white on the map right there. You just need to go tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. Yes, we open up shelters if they're needed, but we don't want you to go to a shelter. We prefer you go with friends or family or to a hotel if that's something you're able to do. So we have a lot of great resources for you to make a plan. And one of those is our hurricane guide. And yeah, we've had to update it this year for the COVID. We've added some things in there to consider, face masks, things like that, disinfectant, which you should have had anyways in a normal kit, but this year, very important. We also have our great website with a lot of good information as well too. And so what we're just asking is that you make a plan for what you're going to do to leave the barrier islands. We protect the barrier islands with security, make sure that no one's going to go back out there while it's evacuated as long as we can. Another thing to consider why we asked you to evacuate is, and the mayor could speak to this later, and the chief, is that all those services that are out there leave the barrier islands too. They take those $750,000 expensive fire engines and take them off the barrier islands to protect them from the storm surge, right? All their public works equipment and things like that they can grab and are able to remove, they're going to do that. So you're left out there without the services for the time being because they're going to someplace safe, and they're, of course, preparing to go back as soon as they can and it's safe. The bridges have been inspected. So that's another reason at some point in time during the storm that, we're not going to be able to respond if you remain out there and need some type of assistance. So just make a plan. We have a lot of great material, our guide, and on our website to get yourself somewhere safe for the time being while the storm passes over us. And the last thing is to stay informed. So there's a lot of great news stations and things that are partnered with us here in Pinellas County, but we have some tools ourselves. We like to be your trusted source for the valued information as well as your city. We have our Alert Pinellas application that you can sign up for. And you can put up to 5 addresses in there. So if you want to know, get geo-targeted messaging from us for what's happening at your home on the barrier islands, you can put that address in there. You can put your business in there. You can put your child's school address in there as well too. And if we have to send any messages about what's happening in those neighborhoods, we can geo-target those or blast out our information to everybody who signs up. That allows us to get, to send you a text message. And as you know, text messages, even when your phone can't take a phone call, they can still go through. So that's one of the good reasons for signing up for Alert Pinellas. We have a mobile application too called Ready Pinellas, and we're adding a push notification capability to that as well too. And then, of course, we're on social media and our website. And Nextdoor is a nice neighborhood service as well too, where you can exchange information as well too. So we're just asking you to know your risk. And unfortunately, you live in paradise, but your risk is the storm surge, and of course, wind that comes with any hurricane. And to make a plan for that, just to get yourself out of harm's way for that time when the storm passes over us. And then stay informed with reliable information from your city and from us as well too. Many cities are part of the Alert Pinellas notification system too, so they can send you messages as well too. If post-impact, if you need to know about recovery and things like that, they're all members of that as well too. And we support them if they're not as well too. So that's our message. make sure you know your risks, make a plan, and stay informed. And we're here to help in any way we can. And we partner. One last thing I will add, is looking at the mayor, is we partner with all our cities. We do what's called a response operation call with all our cities and our fire districts, our special fire districts too, to coordinate all this activity. So it's a county-wide effort to protect everybody. There's no, we don't have any infighting, if you will, with any of our cities. We all partner very well together, and it's a coordinated response county-wide. And I think we're very blessed here in Pinellas County with the great coordination that we have.
Joe, let me ask you about evacuations. What are the options that people have?
Well, one is to heed the warning that, we'll put out. Unfortunately, the A zones are one of the first to be called, right? And then your options are, to go host homes. Maybe your business can do the host home program that we have, right? You have the options to go to friends or family as well, too, and to our shelters and to hotels. Is that what you mean, Mary, about where to go, or
yeah, different places people could go,
and that should throw in transportation too, that the buses do run directly to they alter their routes slightly to take people, so you can get on a bus and transfer and get right to a shelter as well too. PSTA does that, and at certain point in times that's actually a free service once we go into an activation or there's an evacuation order. So that's a free service to get you if you need transportation assistance. If you don't have transportation and you're special needs, you could register for special needs transportation from us as well too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. The Q&A is down there in the bottom of your screen, right in the middle. Just click on that and put your question in there, and we'll keep an eye on those. All right. Thank you, Joe. Chief Mike Burton, you are with the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue, and you've had a few years of experience on the beaches. Can you give us a picture of what our communities are doing as a storm is approaching? What is going on out here?
Well, we hope that all of the community and the community members are following their plan. I think Joe talked very well about having a plan. As a storm approaches, it's time to execute that plan. And we see cities doing it, towns doing it up and down the beach. In many cases, it's a 72-hour prior to landfall. We know what we're to be doing. At the 48-hour mark, we know what we're to be doing. We simply ask the community to take some of that same responsibility, be thinking ahead, be thinking a couple moves ahead, and what would I do? Where would I go if I need to evacuate? Because during the time of evacuation is a pretty poor time to have thought about where you're going to go for the first time. So Joe's advice of having some designated options a bit inland, even within the county, there's plenty of good options within the county with families or colleagues.
Okay, so, we talk about personal responsibility. What does that mean when it comes to living on the beach, having a business on the beach? We look to our fire departments, we look to our law enforcement to protect us, to tell us what to do. But at what point, do the residents have that decision-making process and how they're going to prepare their homes? And, at what point is it up to us what we do?
Well, there is a finite window where if you're going to evacuate, you must be out. And let me just make it really clear about some of the risk of not following that advice in those evacuation orders, even in the condos, because it is not a good experience to be up in a condo when all of your utilities, all of your power, your elevators, your vehicles down below flooded out. And the sad reality is responders are not on their way to help you from that in any immediate time frame. The responders all along the beaches, we all pull off the beach and go inland. With the exception of Madeira Beach, all of the Barrier Island fire departments pull inland, pull our resources in, our staffing in to where it's safer. So when someone makes a decision to disregard the evacuation order, they should do so with full knowledge that there is a window of time, and we don't know how long that window of time is on the onset, where they should not expect police, fire, or EMS coverage for a period of hours or could be days. Even when the threat itself is passed, there are a lot of barriers that keep responders from getting back out and trying to provide aid, because we could have infrastructure damage, bridges could be damaged, lots of debris on the roadways. So when you make that decision about evacuation, please think through it very carefully of all of the risks that you could be encountering if you decide to stay. Fire rescue within Pinellas County, we do a lot of things standardized. And one of them is at 50 miles an hour, we stop responding to calls. At sustained winds at 50 miles an hour, we discontinue fire and EMS operations. Again, we don't know how long that's going to be at the onset. So that personal responsibility of thinking, how do I protect myself and my family? And not for a period of hours. How do I protect my family for a period of days and make sure they're safe?
You know, the other thing with condos too is the wind. And Bobby Deskins from Channel 10, who just joined us. Thank you. Hi, Bobby. You know, and Joe said too, how the wind gets stronger actually as you go up in height. And I can remember just with a tropical storm, standing on Gulf Boulevard and looking right through a condo. Wind had just blown it right through, and this was right on our beaches there. And it wasn't even a hurricane at that point. So, Chief, during Hurricane Irma, at some point we stopped sending emergency responders out. Do you remember that? And tell me just a little bit on a personal note.
How does
that feel for you know, emergency responders to
the people I think that have the toughest job during that window are our 911 telecommunicators that are on the phone with people in pretty desperate conditions and having to tell people at times for the first time in their professional career, I'm very sorry, but help is not on the way. Those are pretty gut-wrenching decisions that people have to make, and they're not taken lightly of when we stop responding. But we've got to protect our personnel, we've got to protect our assets, and we've got to protect the ability to get back out once the storm passes. So those are very, very difficult decisions that no police chief, fire chief, or emergency manager takes lightly, because it goes in conflict with everything we've done in our entire careers in trying to reach out and help people in really desperate times. But that's the reality that time will come. And if we could tell you it was 2 hours, that might be, but we can't tell you on the front end how long that window might be.
When do you get back? And what is your first job when you are able to get back over to the beaches?
Well, and that getting back assumes that the DOT has cleared all the drawbridges and everything is safe to go back. And then it depends on how long the city and county forces take to get road clearance. Because as debris, construction debris and vegetation is all over the roadways, again, even if we can get out, we can't get down the roads until that road clearance operation has taken place. And again, there's not an unlimited amount of resources to do that with. Again, that adds to the dilemma of not knowing how long it may take. We may be able to get back out to the beach, but even getting back out, our responses are severely impacted just by the road conditions, wires down, and just the hazards that are out in the community.
So in other words, people should really take that seriously.
Make that decision wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a tough decision, and there's not an exit strategy once you get to a certain point. You've made your decision, and there's not a lot of other options at that point. So choose wisely.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's do another polling question. All right, this one is, where do you plan to evacuate? Out of town, with friends or family, public shelter, hotel, motel, that would include Airbnb or other. Okay, it's funny how we go up and down. All right, we're almost there. Okay, we still have results dribbling in, but we'll call it a vote, and 38% will go with friend or family. And that is, as Joe was saying, that's our recommendation is to find a friend or a family member who lives in a non-evacuation zone. I might just mention real quickly, though, with COVID-19 and the CDC guidelines, is when you are going to someone's house, kind of keep that in mind, too, when you're making your plans with them. You might want to separate your families a little bit, and figure out your facilities and your sharing of facilities as well. And then you can be safe in both ways. Some people are going out of town. We have 18% going to a hotel or motel. Okay. Well, I like that you know where you're going. That's good. Okay. All right. Onward. We're really concerned about COVID-19. As I'd mentioned, we go in other people's houses, and specifically when we're talking about public shelters, we've been getting a lot of questions about that. But first, to tell us generally about public shelters and the different types is Mecca Servistini. She is our Health and Human Services Program Lead here at Pinellas County Emergency Management. Mecca, can you tell us about our public evacuation shelters?
Yes, thank you, Mary. We have 3 different kinds of shelters here in Pinellas County. We have special needs shelters, general population shelters, and pet-friendly shelters. The only difference between a general population shelter and a pet-friendly shelter is one accepts pets and the other doesn't, but the accommodations are the same. Special needs shelters have a slightly different accommodation so that we can look out for our residents that have access and functional needs, and they do require a little more accommodation than the healthy adult. The pet-friendly shelters accept dogs and cats. We do ask that if you're going to a pet-friendly shelter with your dog or cat, that you remember to bring your pet carrier, your county license, any documentation, and any medications that animal is on. You are expected to care for your own animal in those shelters, but they do not stay at your sleeping quarters with you. And that's because we never know who's going to have an allergy to that animal. A family member that's there with someone that has a cat and is allergic to dogs, we can't have them right next to you. I always also recommend when I'm talking to people about the friendly shelters is to bring something that comforts your animal, whether that's a favorite toy, a blanket, a shirt that smells like you, because they're going to be in a crate and they get scared too. Now, as far as preparing yourself for a public shelter, our general population shelters do not have generators. So bringing, maybe a battery-powered fan and a flashlight with extra batteries is always recommended. We also don't have cots in these shelters, so, we recommend you bring nothing bigger than a twin-size air mattress for an individual because space is limited. But, some people will also go and get camping cots from Walmart, or they'll bring one of the pool chairs that lay down flat. And we've seen those come in as well. It's also a noisy place. So, and lights are always on. We can't make it completely dark because if you get up during the night, we can't have you tripping over someone. So we recommend, if these bother you, to pack earplugs and maybe a sleep mask in your kit that you bring to the shelter with you. And we also recommend something to keep you busy. Sometimes you could be in there for days. If Dorian had made it this far, we saw it sit on the Bahamas for 3 days. And, you'll get bored just sitting in a middle school gym that long. So bringing something like crossword puzzles or books, something that's not as dependent on electricity because the power may go out. but can still keep you occupied.
Okay, and also, I think a fan, and I heard from a couple people who stayed at shelters to bring those handy wipes and deodorant. But and did you mention the face cloth coverings?
Yes, that's something we've added to the list in the COVID environment. We are asking anyone that comes to a public shelter to bring a cloth face covering as recommended by the CDC, sanitizer, and even some sanitizing wipes.
Now, speaking of the special concerns with COVID-19, how has that changed your planning? Because obviously hurricane season is worrisome enough, and now we've been going through this other crisis. So how does that change the shelter plan?
It did change them quite a bit. We had to take a hard look at the sheltering plans we had in place and make several different changes. The main thing being to integrate social distancing into these plans. We recognized that people of the same household don't necessarily need to social distance from each other. They just need to distance from the household next to them. And taking these types of details into consideration really helps us maximize the space we have to work with. Another thing we've seen as a change is staffing shortages. A lot of our shelters run on volunteer staffing, and because a lot of those volunteers are in the elderly population, they've let us know that they will not be coming this year to keep from making themselves exposed to any kind of COVID environment. And this is where we really stress the special needs, because this is even affecting our Department of Health staff that staffs our special needs shelters. We're seeing about a 25% reduction because of that elderly, vulnerable population that cannot report in for duty right now. So if your family member, if your loved one is going to a special needs shelter, we really stress that you either come with them yourself or make sure that their homemade, their caregiver does come with them.
Wow, that's a great thing to mention too, because then at least you know they're being taken care of in the shelter.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. Thank you for working on that for us, and because we want to keep everybody safe in more ways than one, right? So, thank you, Mecca. Okay, well, the other thing, driving around the beaches, what do you see a lot of other than dogs? Is boats, right? They're in our backyards, they're in our driveways, they're in the marinas, and that's a whole nother thing that you have to prepare for, just like everything else in your life. Whatever you have, the more blessings you have, the more you have to worry about, right? But we do have a lot of boats. So I've asked Joe Brimash, who's the commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary 11-3 right here in Madeira Beach, to give us just an overview of some of the things you might want to think about when preparing your boat. Commander?
Thank you, Mary. Good evening. Thank you for participating too. For everyone out there in video land, it's important that you have a plan, and that's probably going to be the most popular word that you're going to hear tonight. Have a plan and prepare. We have almost 1 million registered boaters in the state of Florida. That makes us #1 in the country. Pinellas County has 10,000. So 10,000 boats, that's quite a bit in our small little area. So it takes some time to move boats around if you have to. But the key to protecting your boat, again, have a plan, be prepared, and follow through with your plan. Don't make any last-minute changes. It's all about the risks that you're willing to take. If you do all these things, you should already have a plan right now. And for you people that are on this online video session right now, you probably already have a plan. But spread it to your other friends and neighbors that don't have a plan. That they have to do something with their boats, and maybe lead by example with your neighbors. Okay. Each boat owner's plan is going to be unique to their own kind of situation. Some of us have trailered boats. Some of us have marina boats where we do dry storage, and some of us have lifts and or we just lash up in a hurricane hole. Whatever it is, go with that plan and stick with it. But I have to tell you, the safest place, and there's been a study done, that boats are safer on shore and on land, where you can tie the boats down. Okay, tie the boats down just like you would on your slip, using long lines. You can use screw-in projectiles that screw right into the ground. You can tie everything up together in all four corners. Okay. And what I really want you to do is prepare your boat for a hurricane. Use the situation at hand and all the information that you have. And you should have already assessed all of your cleats and your boat's condition. But basically, I want you to remove everything that you can. Remove all your accessories that you've already spent money on. Your biminis, your dodgers, your cushions and your canvases, your radios, all of your safety equipment. Take it all out of there. Take all your air vents out of there. And then you can also get some tape and then tape up all the seams, because that water has a strange way of getting inside your boat. Tape up your doors, tape up your windows, and rig your fenders on the outside. But believe me, the last thing you want to do is with the day that the storm hits, within 8 hours, you don't want to be doing this, because you'll forget something, and don't, believe me, don't stay on board your boat. Go ahead, next slide. I want to introduce you to spring lines. Spring lines are long lines, and that's what we want. We want to stay away from these 4-foot lines that you normally use for your bow and your stern. But this gentleman over here has a sailboat, and he's using spring lines. Spring lines are longer lines, and they compensate for what the earlier speaker had said about storm surges. We have a problem with the water that's going to raise up quite a bit, and it's also going to lower quite a bit too. So you want to have your boat be able to move up and down accordingly. Otherwise, the lines are going to be too tight. You might tear off your cleats, and spring lines are the way to go. What I mean by that is, with this sailboat here, he's also doubled up his lines. So lines that are 15, 20 feet long, that extend from the front of the boat all the way to the back of the pile that you see in the picture, or from the back of the boat all the way to the front of the pile, allows the boats to stay in place and also be able to move up and down with the water. One thing he didn't do, though, was remove that canvas and remove those sails. That's probably one thing he should have done, and removed all that. Okay. And if you do decide to move your boat, do it early. Sooner or later, those bridges are going to be closed, and you won't be able to get past those bridges, and you don't want to get stuck in the middle of your plan. And you'll be able to know when those bridges are closed through the county when they bring out their evacuation orders. NOAA will also put out advisories, and you keep an eye on the weather speed and the wind speed. Correct? I mean, the captain of the port is also going to come up with a time when he just feels that the gale force warning is 39 miles per hour or more of sustained wind. He's going to pretty much close everything down. And that means that all movable bridges will be closed down to traffic. But prior to that, you'll be able to go through the bridges normally. They're open on a half-hour schedule. Private boats can move to safe zones, and you can still call your bridge tenders on Channel 13 and have them open at a moment's notice. But once that lockdown is covered, then you're not going to be able to close anything down. So thank you for listening, and have a good day.
Thank you, Commander. Very good information. Okay, Let's do a polling question, everyone. Okay, this is about communications. How do you prefer to receive information during a hurricane? And what source of information do you check first for updates during a hurricane? Got Alert Pinellas, our website, the media, social media, and next door. Oh, look, we have a lot of users of Alert Pinellas. That's cool. All right, I think just about everybody's in. Okay, so we have 64% for Alert Pinellas. That's terrific. And the media, yes, we all are turning into the weather constantly, aren't we? All right, and social media, very good. Okay, that helps us to know how you get your information too. So, Joe, let me just ask you real fast. After a hurricane goes by, how can people get back on the beach? When does that happen? So everybody wants to know, when can I get back and how do I get back? Joe Boris, if you, sorry, we have two Joes here tonight.
Right. So, post impact, and it really depends on when that happens, right? So Irma left us when the tropical storm force winds left Pinellas County. That was on the 10th. I think that was Monday, about 10 a.m. or so. So, we had some daylight left where we could get out and have the bridges inspected and do what we call the first push of road clearing. And that's going to take, 6-8 hours to do that. So that would have put us to dark. And that's about the general time for each time. So it really depends on when the storm leaves us and how much daylight we have left to be able to push off and clear the roads and make things safe. The down power lines are the biggest hazards out there. So, Duke and Tico are out there with us. So we ask our residents, just because it looks pretty and you can see the storm exiting, that they give us that time to clear everything. And we're going to try to message that a little better going forward, because after Irma, we saw a lot of people hit the roads. And I just remind everybody really quickly, what happens when the street lights aren't working? It's a 4-way stop. You need to stop at that intersection. You're putting those, some of our major intersections, it takes 4 officers to guard an intersection. And that's a lot of man and woman power to do that. And it's dangerous for them out there. People were blowing through those intersections. So you need to be careful. But yeah, we could need, at least 8 hours or more to make it safe for residents to go and start traveling about the county. And at that point, the barrier islands are all protected by the bridges with those security checkpoints. The deputies are going to return as soon as it's safe to do that and keep people off so that the barrier island cities can inspect. There's just Gulf Boulevard to run up and down. And God forbid we get a Michael or something and the road's washed out. There's sand everywhere. That area needs to be cleared out. So you might not be able to use the Park Boulevard Bridge and go through Radington Shores or Indian Shores to get to your neighbor. You might have to go farther north or farther south. So you need to let us get that time so we can get that information out to you. And then, of course, we keep the whole county closed as well, too, to make sure that we have time to do that as well, too. And we try to coordinate those two things.
Okay, thank you. So in a hurricane, of course, we said we're glued to our TVs and we're watching that cone of death and all those spaghetti models and everything. And so with us today, to make a little sense of all of that, is Bobby Deskins. He is the chief meteorologist at 10 News, WTSP, Tampa, St. Petersburg. So Bobby, what does all of this mean and all these forecasts and that we are seeing? And of course, this horrible weather, we're a little worried.
Yeah, lots of numbers, lots of cone of uncertainty, or what most people on this call the cone of overtime. But that's the way the season goes. When we look now, we look at forecasts for the season. Just about every organization that puts out forecasts so far is saying that we're going to have an above average season, which is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes and 3 of those becoming major hurricanes, which means a category 3 or higher, which is 111 mile per hour winds sustained. So you're looking at NOAA's forecast. AccuWeather does it, Colorado State. There's a bunch of places now that are doing it. Just about everybody is higher than the numbers that you see. NOAA is thinking anywhere from 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 of those becoming hurricanes, and then 3 to 6 of those becoming major hurricanes. And that's that's a big uptick, because that's the ones that can really do a lot of damage. Irma was a cat 3. Irma was even higher than that when it went over parts of the Caribbean. But those numbers are just forecast numbers. And we show this to people on TV every year. And I feel like I have to do it. But, you have to be prepared one way or the other. It only takes one storm to do any damage. These types of forecasts here just kind of let everybody know, hey, it's probably going to be a bigger season. I do tend to show these, especially when they're on the higher side, because I want people to get ready. And just like everybody here tonight has said, have a plan. And this tells you need to have a plan, and you need to have your hurricane kit ready to go. Because look at us. What's today, the 3rd or the 4th? We are 4th. 4 days into June. We have 3 named storms already, which is a new record for us. We've never had that many named storms before June 5th. That was the old record in the season. And if you look at this map here, this is showing you the frequency. We tend not to see almost 95% of our storms until after August 1st. So we're in a quiet part of the season. Now, this part of the season, we do watch the Gulf of Mexico. We watch the Western Caribbean. And those are areas just like Cristobal now that come out to the north, perhaps the northwest, but a lot of times to the north and the northeast. And those are the ones that can get us here. A storm coming into Tampa from the Gulf of Mexico has a much better chance of giving us storm surge. And this time of year, with the water being really warm, beach water temperatures 85, 87. It's 85 today because of rain. It's been 86, 87 degrees. 80 degrees is the magic number. That's where you get the evaporation to really provide the fuel for the fire for hurricanes. So once it gets over 80 degrees, and that's one of the reasons why the season starts around June 1st, we can get storms. So, there are lots of global aspects to the weather that we look at: communications, the North Atlantic Oscillation, the MJO. These are things that tell us where will the high pressure be in the Atlantic. Will that push storms towards Florida? Will it push them away from Florida? Will we have an active period? Right now, we're in active period of the MJO. The rest of June, 2.5 weeks, are supposed to actually be fairly quiet, according to the MJO. But we don't know. And especially this time of year in the Gulf and the Western Caribbean, anything can pop up. So it's really important to have that plan ready to go and to get that kit ready to go. And this is, when Larry Gisbert, you guys probably know that name. I got this from him. He's just run from the water and hide from the wind. All of these plans and all of these things you hear us talking about, especially when we talk about evacuations, you get out of the way of the water. And there's a difference. There's a difference between an evacuation zone, level A, level B, level C, versus a flood zone. And a flood zone may be just an area along a river that tends to flood, and you may have to evacuate because normally when we get heavy rain, that area floods. But when I say run from the water, I'm typically talking about those evacuation zones, A, B, and C. Those people have to get out of the way of the water. Just like he said, don't leave the boat in the water. Get it out of the water. You got to get out of that way. Now, I say hide from the wind. The hurricane's 200, 300, 400 miles wide. We're all going to get some wind, right? We don't need everybody on the road. Irma was going to go up the east coast of Florida. So they started evacuating from Miami. Then it was going to come up the west coast of Florida. So you had Marco, Naples, Sarasota even, people evacuating, even Tampa. Then it went right up the middle of the state. We had 6.5 million people evacuate the state. That's the largest evacuation in the history of the state of Florida. We ran out of gas so early because everybody was filling up to get out of there that they were able to truck gas back down before the storm even hit, which is not necessarily a bad thing because people were trying to get up and out of the way. They just didn't want to live through the storm. But we try and say, look, you don't need to get out of the way of this storm. You just need to be in a sturdy structure. If you're in a mobile home, you have to evacuate. But if you're in a sturdy home and you've got a safe shelter and you can get to one of the shelters, especially when you focus in all the COVID-19 that we're having to deal with, then you're safe. You're good. Stay off the roads. Stay home. Stay safe. It's dangerous to be out there in the traffic. People are nervous. People are scared. They're in places they may not normally travel because they've evacuated from somewhere else, and you can have lots of car accidents. You will sit in traffic. And now you may sit in traffic like Hurricane Charlie in a parking lot on I-4 because everybody left Tampa to go up to Orlando. So having that plan, having a place to go, knowing the shelter, going to a friend's house, that's something you want to do within tens of miles. You don't evacuate hundreds of miles unless you can help it. But running from the water, we need those people on the road. We need those people to get up and get out because that's where the storm surge is coming in, and that is life-threatening. Water basically kills more people than anybody else. Ice, yes.
Bobby, do you know what this is?
The
Can you
auto ice.
tell us about your nickel trick? You know,
Oh, I
sometimes
see
you
it
leave
now,
the
yes.
house and you come back and you're not really sure if you lost power or not.
That's right. So you don't want to lose everything in your house if you evacuate in your freezer. So while you have power, before you leave, you take a coffee mug or a cup like that, you fill it up with water, you stick it in the freezer overnight, and you freeze it. The next day, you take it out and you put a quarter on top. And you put it right back in the freezer with all of your stuff. And then when you evacuate and you go, you're gone for 5, 6, 7 days, you don't know if the power went out, right? You weren't there. So you don't know if the power went out, ruined all of your food. Then while you were still gone, the power came back on and froze everything again. Now you've got frozen bad food, but you don't know it. Unless you get back, you pull that frozen cup out, and if the quarter's now down at the bottom of the cup, that means that the ice melted and then it refroze. Got to throw everything out of the freezer.
So, voila. a tip to bring home. I said a nickel. I guess it got more expensive.
You know what?
Inflation.
Save some money. Save some money. You're right. Penny will do.
Do a penny. There you go. Thanks, Bobby. We do have a couple questions that we have a couple minutes for. One, I am in Bel Air Beach, 4 homes off of Gulf Boulevard in a 1-story block home. What level height of storm surge will affect my home? Joe Boris, do you want to take this one?
Sure, and we actually have an application for you for that. You can put in your address to our storm surge protector application, and it will show you the anticipated storm surge that's out there, and whether or not how high the water will get for your neighborhood. But off of what level height of storm surge will affect my home? So when we look at an evacuation and lifelong Pinellas County residents, we know that we get coastal storm surge, and Bobby can probably speak to this as well, at certain amounts. You know, our coast can handle 2 to 3 feet above high tides, coastal storms. We know the Tarpon Springs sponge docks will flood a little bit. You know, along Upham Beach a little bit right there will flood, and Corey at the end of Corey Avenue. We know those little spots right there. But, you know, we're going to call an evacuation when it's about, 4 or 5 foot of storm surge, and knowing that what's going to happen, it's going to fill up the storm surge drains and come over the back of the intercoastal and start flooding the barrier islands. That's how the flooding happens out there. So, you could look at the storm surge protector, but, anything above 4 or 5 foot, you could get storm surge in your home along the barrier islands.
Okay, thank you. Mecca, have one for you. Do public shelters have food and water available, or do we bring our own?
We do have food and water in our public shelters, but it's school food. It's the cafeteria food. So if you have special dietary needs, we encourage you to bring your own. And we also encourage you to bring snacks, because we do serve meals, but we don't have that in-between snack.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, many people I know think they've survived a hurricane because they were here during Irma. Wasn't Irma only a tropical storm when it hit us, and can you contrast that to Michael that hit the Panhandle? Chief, I'm going to ask you this one.
I can comment on Michael because, like many other Pinellas County professionals, we were in Bay County, those counties working. And I don't even know that it's fair to compare the two events. Irma pales in comparison, certainly from an inconvenience and threat to the state, it was quite significant. But I think the catastrophic damage that I personally have seen in Andrew are quite substantial and quite different than what we saw with Irma. And Joe may have a different opinion.
No, we got lucky by time and distance for Irma. If it was here sooner, it'd have been stronger. If it had been closer to us, it'd have been stronger as well too, right? So the right side of the storm is the worst side. So we were blessed it went up the middle of the state and we got some of that. But any sooner, it would have been stronger. And you never know about tornadoes that can spin off from these bands that go through. They saw many of that up the right side. Jacksonville sustained some damage and things like that from Irma. So, you can't discount Irma because we were lucky with, again, by time and distance for that. But yeah, Michael was a devastating impact. I was there, when we saw the first images from Mexico Beach, there was dead silence in the EOC, and I mean dead silence. And it was unbelievable. And then just driving out what happened in Panama City, the city of Panama City that had no storm surge, the wind damage there was just, as many years I've been doing this, I was just flabbergasted. You take those gas station awnings and it looked like somebody had literally picked them up, crumpled them, and threw them back down. So, yeah, you can't compare the two. But, that's our business to tell the folks out there, and with Bobby out there as well, too, saying what, the strength of these storms and what can happen, and you should heed our warnings for that.
Yeah, we got so lucky with Irma. Irma really came through here Saturday night, Sunday night. By Monday morning early, it was moving out. Saturday morning, I left my house. I knew I'd be gone until Monday at least. We thought it might be coming up the West Coast. Much stronger storm, much worse storm surge issue. It got lucky. It turned, came in down south, and as he said, put more distance over land so it could weaken. Did a number in Polk County because the center was there with the highest winds. We had winds in the 70s, a couple of 90s out on the beaches, and that was on the backside of the storm. Mexico Beach, you guys know, it was sustained well above that. And that especially right in that area, the storm surge, because it was just blowing on shore, was just incredible. Irma was the first landfalling hurricane in Florida in almost 10 years. And a lot of people have moved to Florida in that time and since then. So for people to say, oh, we survived Irma, they don't know. They don't know. And that's our job, to say that without saying we're hyping it up. Because we were a day away from that being a storm coming up the coast and being a much worse storm for us.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. This is serious stuff when you're asked to evacuate. We get into the car and we put our seatbelts on, and when we get to work okay and we're safe, we don't say, oh, darn, we didn't put that seatbelt on for nothing. And we don't get mad about that. So if we have to evacuate a day or two or even 3 and come back to, our home for nothing, I'll take it. I'll take that price of living in paradise.
Mary, can I mention one thing? It reminded me, the Bear Islands and Irma was, when we call an evacuation order, we call, a start time and an end time. And that end time is very important because we try to time that out. So it's about an hour or more out from when the tropical storm force winds will start arriving. So that's what people, when they hear the evacuation order, the end time, they should be wherever they need to be by the end of that evacuation time, because that's when things will start to deteriorate quickly. I just wanted to make sure people are aware of that.
And Joe, I just had a real quick question for you, because for Irma, you guys started that 3 days out, which was actually a really good thing, but it was normally, I tell everybody it's 48 hours. That's when they start, but you need extra time. So do you guys have some kind of leeway for that when you're looking versus what the Hurricane Center forecast might say, arrival times of tropical storm, and then you kind of build backwards and maybe go an extra day?
Right. The Hurricane Center, as you know, has improved that. They now give us the earliest arrival of times and the most likely arrival of those tropical storm wind times. And we do look at that. For Irma, the decision making was we kept waiting for it to make that turn, right? You know, it's heading through the Keys, and then would it make the turn, or is it going to pop out in the Gulf, and which was our fear, and then it was going to be steered right into, you know, it was going to hook right into us, and that was our fear. So we started the A evacuation executive policy group, said, you know, we need to start a little sooner for this. So we called the A, first time where we staged too, where we did an A evacuation, and the next morning, you know, it still was trending just that little bit, and that's what we're looking for. And we only have so much time to do the evacuation. So we have this model, and it looks at, you know, 13 hours for an A, and it goes up for each one of the categories of storms. We had to pull the trigger on the B to have everybody that was in the A and B zones enough time to clear by that hour before the tropical storm force winds. So yeah, we're constantly looking at that and backing up all our decision making to that. And we're waiting for what is the last moment we can make that decision that backs all that up. So we have a lot of little tools that help us with that, but you're absolutely right. We were looking at that very strongly and making those decisions.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for tonight. We did have some questions that we did not get to, so remember that we will be sending that follow-up email with all this information on it, and the video will be posted as well. So thank you very much to our wonderful panelists. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. And Mayor, I just wanted to ask you, we know we're a little out of time, but if you just want to say any final words.
Well, you know, we're enduring the COVID situation right now, and it's the advice I would give everybody out there is stay safe, and staying safe is having a plan. So whether it's COVID-19 or hurricanes, have a plan and stick to it. Thank you.
But also know that the plan's going to change. Right?
Yes, that's true.
The first rule of your plan, the plan's going to change.
Emperor Gumby.
Okay, thank you, everyone.